anyone that is feeling like they're living a life that they're forced to live, a quick change in attitude by saying, I choose to do something different, choose to do something different, even if it's a minor thing, even if it's getting out of bed on a different side of the bed, even if it's using a different pillow, even if it's changing the order that you wash your face and brush your teeth. You're choosing to make a change, and that in and of itself is a small victory every day. Your ability to make a choice is a series of everyday victories.
Now, I am going to tell you a little bit about our guest, Tony Rose. Tony is the founding partner of Rose, Snyder, and Jacobs, and they are a staple firm in LA and the San Fernando Valley. Originally, it was just Tony's firm, and he started it with his mentor, Mary Snyder. And I make sure I bring that up because Tony is an incredible champion of women, past, present, and I know in the future. He helps entrepreneurs and high-worth individual families to tax minimize what they pay. I can't even tell you all the great things he does, but I know that if you want a person that is probably the smartest person in the room, has the utmost integrity, character second to none, you are going to want Tony Rose in your corner. So buckle up, folks, because Tony is about to take us for a ride. Welcome, Tony, and thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Talk about setting unrealistic expectations, Dr. Betty Ann. I don't know what to do with you.
Oh, come on. I set a high bar because I have seen you in action. So your false humility will not be accepted here.
No, not false humility. I'm just like everybody else. We're doing the best we can, or at least most of us are.
That's right. Okay, so Tony, tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started. I know a little bit, but it is a fascinating story of growth where your focus, and this is why I am so happy you agreed to be on this podcast, because you are a true champion of relationships, the relationships in your personal life, the relationships for your clients, and the relationships with your employees. So I would love you to speak to that because it has differentiated you from the pack.
Okay. Little bit of background. I was engaged when I entered in college with my high school sweetheart, and I was going to be a history teacher. I wanted to be a history teacher. I love information. Oh yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And so I was getting ready to get married. I was 19 years old, and I went to the counselor at the University of Southern California where I was going. And she said, hey, you need to take some electives. And I said, well, what will I take? She said, well, you can take anything you want. I said, oh, how about accounting? I don't know how to balance my checkbook. Now, I don't know if anybody anymore balances their checkbook. In those days, you had to balance your checkbook against your bank statement. And she said, oh, that's a good idea. And I went into
one of these.
Yeah, one of those.
Checkbooks.
But I go on the computer now and I can see what checks have cleared and haven't cleared. And I kind of know what's going on with my checkbook. So I confessed, I don't balance my checkbook anymore.
Because you don't have a checkbook, truth be told. You have it.
Well, I do have a checkbook right back there. I got a checkbook. So I changed my major to accounting because I took that first elective class, and the instructor I had, he wasn't even a professor, was a man by the name of James Pratt, who had just come from public accounting industry, and he was absolutely on fire. He was on fire, Dr. Patty Ann. And he loved accounting. And it made sense to me. It was easy for me. And I've always been a person that wants to do things easy. And so I changed to accounting, became an accountant, got married, and off I went. I was originally an auditor at a place called Grant Thornton. It was before it was called Grant Thornton. It was called Alexander Grant and Company. And I was crappy, really crappy. Remind me to discuss with you the rule of crappy at some point in time, Dr. Patty Ann, because I think that's important for everybody. But I was crappy. And they fired me after 7 months.
No way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. The greatest. After 7 months, fired, newly married, a lot of bills, no job, scared out of my mind. And I called my old accounting professor, whose name was Jack Larson. And I said, gee, I'm out of a job. I don't know what to do. And Jack said, let me get back to you. So I dropped a dime and he answered the phone. And
people listening that might be a little bit younger than us, dropping a dime, Tony is referencing the old school payphone. Continue.
That's true. The old school payphone. So I dropped a dime. He answered the phone. He did not have to answer, but he answered that phone and he said, let me get back to you. And he made a few phone calls and he connected me to the rest of my life. I didn't know it then, but what I learned afterwards is that the power of relationship is more powerful than money. And that's really the lesson that you know, of course. Mm-hmm. And hopefully the people that are listening and watching this podcast will understand. Relationship, I think, trumps everything. Can I use the word trump anymore?
You can use whatever word you want, Tony.
Thank you. So relationships trump money. More important than money. Jack Larson was a very interesting man. He was maybe one of the most hated faculty members on the University of Southern California campus. But during the Kent State era, which was 1970, I think, some college students were killed by National Guardsmen in the Midwest. In Ohio. Thank you.
Yeah. Four students were killed during a protest. It was a blotch on, history.
Yes. And the university campuses, they didn't erupt the way we've seen eruptions, but people went on strike and it was a big deal. And myself and friends of mine invaded the faculty center at University of Southern California, and we did a sit-in.
I am learning a whole new side.
Oh,
he's got a little bit of hippie in him. Keep going. I'm taking notes.
A little bit. I was a short-haired hippie. The thing is that Jack walked up to us and he recognized me because I had already been in one of his classes. And he said, I don't understand what you guys are so upset about. He said, why don't I take you to dinner? And I want to talk about it. And he took us to dinner. It was a free meal. Free meal. We went. I had steak and lobster at a place called the Los Feliz Inn in Los Angeles. It was the greatest dinner I'd ever had. And we talked with Jack, and he became very human to me. And he became a good friend of mine. And I became a friend of he and his wife, who is still a client of ours to this day. I
Wow.
will not charge her a penny for anything. Now, this relationship created a snowball effect for me. Going to the firm I went to was called Tillian Roth, and I met Mary Snyder, who saw something in me and became my mentor, my trainer, and eventually my business partner. All because actually of a sit-in at the Faculty Center at University of Southern California and the power of relationship. I think I'm being long-winded.
No, I think actually I love that story. And I think it's not just because of what you described, but I think it also speaks volume to who you were as a student and a person. Because this professor, who you said was one of the most hated professors on campus,
Yep.
You clearly found a way to build a relationship with him. And I know you've continued that throughout your career. So take it from there.
You mean progress the career or talk more about relationship?
Relationships as it's impacted your career.
Well, it's always about relationship. I think that for an accountant, losing a client is almost a lot harder than getting a client because it's so inconvenient for people to change accountants. And an accountant that smiles at all and acts like they care at all, it's pretty hard to let go of. I'm sure, Dr. Patty Ann, you know, in your relationship with your accountant, it would take a lot to get rid of them, even if that accountant stopped the relationship dead. You just really have to kick it to the side or it stays. Now, there's some people that are looking for bargains, and if you get too expensive, they leave you. But it is very painful to change accountants because of the relationship. There's a very important concept that I write about in one of my books. I think it's in my book called Say Hello to the Elephants, which is going to be republished, called Quadrant Thinking. And we talk about something called a trusted advisor formula. And it was a book that was written years ago by David Maister, David Green, and another person. And he talks about how to measure the different elements of a relationship that you have with a professional or anyone in your life. And he said it was a matter of 4 different elements. The 4 elements of that are these: competency, reliability, intimacy, and the concept of self-orientation. And in that, you can create a formula. If you add, if you would grade your perception of someone on a scale of 1 to 10, and if you grade it 1 for competence, 1 to 10 scale for competence, 1 to 10 for reliability, 1 for your intimacy with that individual, and then you divide it by a score of self-orientation, you get a trusted advisor. What would that terminology be? Quotient. By the way, I almost flunked dumbbell math at University of Southern California, but I'm a very successful accountant.
Wait, what kind of math did you say you almost flunked?
Dumbbell math.
Dumbbell math. Should I know are you being sarcastic? What is dumbbell math?
Dumbbell math was the most elementary course in math I could take to be able to graduate university.
It's literally called dumbbell math. Everybody
I
listening.
call everything. I call everything something else. You know,
I thought maybe it was just me being the dumbbell. Okay, got it.
It was like math minus 101. So, you know, taxes is as much arithmetic as it is math. In fact,
wait a minute. Before you go there, I want you to go back to what was number 4, self-orientation. Say more about what that is. Like, we know what the other three are.
Let's think of self-orientation scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the most self-oriented, 1 being the least. Now, by the way, I don't believe anyone that you hire has no self-orientation. They would like to get paid. If you hire them to do a job, they'd like to get paid. So your college roommate who loves you, who cares about you, and who you would hire and gives you an incredible discount probably has a self-orientation of 2. The proverbial used car salesperson might have a self-orientation of 8. So if you can think about those relationships.
Okay,
So any professional you would hire probably has a self-orientation of between 4 and 6. There's some professionals you hire whose answer to you is always on the side of spend more money on me. There's some professionals you hire who's really trying to look after you, but if you don't pay them, they ain't going to like you very much. Maybe that's so that's self-orientation. I talk a lot in my books and in my podcasts, which is called Go Beyond Numbers, about the concept of trusted advisor formula. I think it's very powerful. But that really is all about relationship. If you get a sense that you can be intimate and tell people stuff, your sense of intimacy with them is high. If you think they don't care about you and you don't want to bother with them and they're just there to get the job done, it might be, by the way, it might be someone that comes to your house to fix something. They probably don't care about anything but getting the thing fixed and getting out of there.
So it's very transactional versus relational. So you just touched on something I definitely would like to explore a little bit more. And I know in your podcast and your books, you talk about that. So you talked about intimacy, right? And your trusted advisors. And for the listeners, I know plenty of people in the Genius Network that are very smart people. There are many advisors in it. I have never heard anyone say anything other than flattering things about Tony and how trustworthy he is and how much he volunteers his time for others because he is relational. But you just said something that I think is important for you to talk a little bit more about because you don't hear financial people talk this way, Tony. You talked about people being willing to share information with you, right? Now, we know, I know that most financial decisions are based on emotion in spite of what we think.
Not most, all.
Oh, okay. Well, I always sometimes feel like I have to throw out that caveat, but you're right. And so you have learned the art, you have mastered the art of developing a relationship where you can create an intimate relationship with people because you have found a way for them to be able to trust you with their most vulnerable aspects of themselves. So that vulnerability is key to becoming trusted. How do you do that?
I tell everyone in this office that there is only one question that a client has. Only one question. That question is, do you care for me? Do you care for me? Ultimately, any professional and their client, the strength of that relationship rests on the belief by the client that that professional cares about them. To the extent that there's a belief that by the client that the professional doesn't care, the relationship's not very sticky. It's very transactional. And I think, and I want to get back to the concept of actions and decisions.
Please.
Every decision is emotional because you might know everything about it. You might be able to get it all settled in your rational mind and have the capability to execute. But anything you do, you have to want to do. Now, I think there's bodily involuntary responses. So, okay.
I think we know what you mean.
Yeah. But in the end, every decision is a volitional decision. It's emotion. So I believe everything is emotion. Even the IRS agent operates on emotion and perception and their reaction to their perceptions. And once you understand that, it helps you be tolerant of what's going on around you rather than raging at the chaos. And I don't know, Patty Ann, don't you think in this world, especially over the last 2 or 3 years, all of us find ourselves in chaos?
And raging. A lot of there's a sense of rage around us. Out of control rage.
Look at the incidence of road rage that's going on now is really quite alarming, but that's because of a loss of control.
Correct.
But the very knowledge that things are in this world that we cannot control, but what becomes grounding is understanding what it is we can control. What can we control? Now, one thing we can control is the quality of our relationships with the people that we love, with the people that we respect, and even with the people we hate. It is a funny thing. I play golf, and I play golf with a regular group of people whose politics are almost diametrically opposed to mine. Excuse me.
Fantastic. They're calling. They just heard what you said. They said, how could you think that?
That is. I can't even find it to turn off.
That's okay. That's okay. Listen, we can control what we can control. What we can't control, let it go.
And that's the truth. So we go play golf and we have a very nice time, and we even talk politics.
You on the golf course or?
Oh yeah, all the time. Because very few of us have really good shots, so we can't say good shot. But we can talk politics, and the ability for us, and we love each other. So the ability for us to respect each other's political position is something that we've forgotten. We can control how we react to others' political positions. We can decide that people's political positions are out of malice to us, which absolutely is untrue. It really is all about them. Well, if you believe it's all about them, then you can control how you react to them. And that's all about relationship to yourself, in my mind.
Continue, because people listening to this never expected this from a CPA. So go along that line, go deeper into that, because it is so true what you're saying, right? The way people react to us is about them, not about us. But you can control how you react to them reacting to us.
Yeah. I will share with the audience, because if you go to my podcast or if you go to my website or anything like that, or my Facebook, you'll see that in December, my wife of 51 years passed away. And during the very tumultuous 4-week period, which I'm very grateful to Dr. Patty Ann for, because she helped walk me through this. Or actually, she strapped me into the bobsled, and the bobsled took me.
We went for a ride together. I wouldn't want to take it with anyone but you, Tony. It was.
Thank you.
It was. You were amazing. You were amazing.
I had the choice of raging against what was happening, or controlling what I could control. And I believe life's a comedy. I believe all of you are going to find the things that irritate you. If you can find just the irony and the humor in it, it makes things a lot more livable. Mm-hmm. Things that you can't explain, you cannot reconcile, you cannot even. The word is not accept. I think accept is a bad word, because you have to accept what happens. You can't
even fathom it. You can't even fathom it. But I think what you're saying is, if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Well, and I did, but you also find humor in things. This weekend, I had to go pick up the death certificates for my wife at the funeral home. And as I was trying to navigate my way to the death certificates, there was a terrible accident that was blocking my path. And then I worked around the terrible accident. And then about a mile later, there was a huge traffic jam where 3 lanes turned into 1 and all the cars were backed up. And I finally was able to make my left turn to get to where the funeral home was. The funny thing is, it took me about 45 seconds or a minute to pick up what I needed to pick. But the world somehow makes it difficult. Everything is hard to do. And that was so symbolic. And I got the package of the death certificates. My 52nd, it would have been my 52nd anniversary, was on January 25th. 2022, for those of you that might be watching this in 2025. And I looked at the death certificate, and the county puts a stamp on it, certifies it. Yeah, she's dead. Bam. The date on that certification was January 25th, 2022. Now, if you don't find irony and almost humor in that my wife of 52 years, my relationship of 55 years, that disappeared on Christmas morning, was then acknowledged by the County of Los Angeles on my 52nd anniversary. I don't know what does. And this is not to cry, but it's understanding that the world, there's something that's going on in the world that we don't understand. And what grounds us is our connectedness to others in sharing our experience. So we are alone, but we're also together in that connection of relationship. Stop me, Patty Ann.
No, I'm not, because I'm not going to stop you, because I want the listeners just heard why I adore you. They just, you don't even realize it, because it's who you are. So you can even see the irony in a loss. But I think, Tony, that's because you live your life every day for others. You are always doing. You are always trying to help. I know for a fact how much you genuinely care about the people that you are connected to in your personal life and in your professional life. And I was actually just talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about how, in so many ways, corporate America is so broken, right? Now, I'm a diehard capitalist, but you have the top CEO, not if you started the company, but if you're named to the CEO position, say for a bank that you didn't start, and you're making all this money, at some level, there should be a multiple for what you make compared to your lowest employee. So at some level, right? Like you give somebody like 10,000 real more dollars, you will change their life. You will, maybe their spouse doesn't have to go to work if you have young kids. So they have a special need child that can get special help, whatever it is. But for the entrepreneurs like you that are the top dog in a company, and most of the entrepreneurs I know, you would never, and I do mean never, and there are very few absolutes in life, you would never have the greed. You would never even think to say, the lion's share of this profit is mine, and I'll give you the scraps. And I think, and I know that speaks to your humanity. So I'm not going to stop.
Boy, that I think that's pretty generous. I would be lying if I didn't say that I certainly do what I do to make money. I am not a charity. I'm
not saying that, and I'm not BSing. I'm not saying it to blow smoke up your butt. Of course, we're all working to make a living, but you don't look at it just about you. I know you don't. Prove me wrong. Go ahead. Try.
Oh God, this is so hard. I do everything I do for me. I do everything I do for me. If I do something for somebody else, it's because it pleases me to do it. Okay. And in fact, it pisses me off if I do something because I'm told that I'm obligated to do it. Mm-hmm, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs that react in much of this political environment, I think that they react because they are nice because they want to be nice, not because they feel obligated to be. They're generous because it pleases them to be generous, not because they're obligated to be generous. In fact, the very definition of generosity has to do with volitional action. So I am selfish. Everything I do is for myself because I'm choosing to do it. Now, maybe if I'm in communist China, I end up having to do stuff that I don't want to do. But thank God where we are in the place in the world we are today, most of the things we do because we choose. If we cheat on our taxes, it's our choice. If we pay more taxes than we need to, it's our choice. It's all about choice, and that has to do with your relationship to yourself.
Right.
You know?
Right. So I want to make sure that the listeners understand that when you say everything you do for yourself, you do for yourself. That's true for everyone. But right? Because it's the classic example of if you're in a plane, you take the oxygen and it's going down, you put it on yourself first before you put the mask on yourself, before you give it to somebody else, right? But you choose to do it for you. You also choose to do for others because I have your bio here, but I don't even have to look at it. All the volunteer entrepreneurial work that you do, you choose to do for you because it makes you feel good doing for others.
I say it pleases me.
It pleases you.
It pleases me. I do it because it makes me feel good is a very good way to put it. And anyone there that is feeling like they're living a life that they're forced to live, a quick change in attitude by saying, I choose to do something different, even if it's a minor thing, even if it's getting out of bed on a different side of the bed, even if it's using a different pillow, even if it's changing the order that you wash your face and brush your teeth. You're choosing to make a change, and that in and of itself is a small victory every day. Your ability to make a choice is a series of everyday victories. Here's the other interesting thing, and this gets to what I talked about earlier. Sometimes your choices don't work out the way you want them to work out. And this is the power of what I call the rule of crappy. I use a different word.
Oh, you can use the real word.
The rule of shitty.
There you go.
And it's a concept that was revealed to me by a man by the name of Michael Burnoff. And I don't know if you've met Michael, Patty Ann.
I haven't met him, but I know who he is. I know you speak very highly of him.
Oh yeah, he's wonderful, wonderful guy, and such great concepts. And the concept is simply this: the first time you do things, and I can extend that to choices you make, very often, most often, maybe 90% of the time, it's the worst you will ever do it. And in fact, expect the result to be shitty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love it.
If you know that you're going to do something, the results of which are likely to be shitty, then what's stopping you from doing it? In my life, I have stopped myself for the first 65 or more years in my life. I failed to do things because I was afraid I was going to be shitty at it. But I'm not shitty at the stuff that I've done a couple times. Most of the time, I'm at least okay, except putting. I cannot putt. But the thing about the rule of shitty is it gives you permission to fail.
Fail. I love it.
I have permission to fail. I've done it plenty in my life, but I also have permission to succeed. And how many people do you know, Patty Ann, that don't even give themselves permission to succeed?
Too many. So, Tony, go with that. Run with that. So the role of shitty, which I love, it allows you to fail. Why do you think? Because I believe you cracked the code on this. Why do you think so many people are afraid to, we could say, fail, to live their life, to take a risk, to take a chance? What are they afraid of?
Pain. When I fail, it's painful. Now, the question is, how long is it painful? The pain can be a little time, or pain can be a long time. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, the things that I delay doing because I'm afraid to fail create low amplitude pain. Mm-hmm. And so it aches. It's not painful. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the stuff that I fail at is really painful, but it only is painful a very small amount of time. And people don't like being in pain. I don't think. The other thing is that people ask and answer questions. They ask and answer their own question when you have no way of knowing what is going to be in the future. So, I just know he's going to be mad. Well, how do you know? Mm-hmm. I just know this cake is going to turn out shitty. Well, rule of shitty. Fine. Let's bake the cake. Maybe we learn something differently. I never had to roast in my life a chicken, ever. So my wife passes away, and a week or so after she passes, I decide I'm going to look up on the computer how to roast chicken. I'm going to make myself some chicken. And I have a daughter who comes at night to make sure I'm able to feed myself, which is very nice, unnecessary, but very nice. And I did all this stuff. I got all the the herbs out of the pantry, and I mixed them up, and I created a dry rub, and I rubbed the thing and olive oil and all this crap. And I turned on the oven and I preheated it to 400 degrees, and I slipped it in the oven, and I was proud of myself. About 36 minutes later, my daughter gets home from work and to pick up her dog. And I talked to her about how proud I am. She says, I don't smell anything. I said, well, don't worry about it. It's been in there for 36 minutes. At 40 minutes, I'm supposed to turn down the heat to 350 degrees for another 10 minutes, and then you let it sit, and I've got it all locked. She says, I don't smell anything. Got to be 40 minutes. The timer went off. I went to turn it down to 350, and I looked in the oven, and the chicken wasn't done at all. And I said, what's going on? To my daughter, she said, you put it in the wrong oven.
You had a double oven.
I had a double oven. So that was a painful, embarrassing experience. But you know what? I will remember forevermore, Patty Ann, which oven to put what food in.
And the suspense is killing me. How did it turn out?
Well, about 40 minutes later, after she put it in the proper oven, and then she wouldn't leave until she checked it out, it was okay.
Okay.
But it certainly didn't taste as sweet as if I had left it in the oven and even burned it, but it was all done by myself.
Okay, so I am going to introduce you to this thing called a crock pot, where you can cook a chicken in a crock pot and it makes chicken soup at the same time. But that's a conversation for another day. But what I'm so struck by is how you can find humor in a situation where you're forced to learn to do something that for 52 years you never had to do.
Yep.
Because I take it that your wife took care of all the cooking. And I think it also speaks to not only the rule of shitty, but it also speaks to the growth mindset that you bring to all your relationships.
I also learned that if you mix colors and whites, put it on cold water. That I had to learn too.
Well, you know the boys in college that don't know that because everything they wear is pink.
Yeah. In this case, I've got a lot of dish rags that are now blue.
But they're good quality dish rags, I'm sure.
Yep.
All right. So, Tony, I have a couple of more questions for you before I hate to let you go because I know you have such a busy day. What is the number one lesson you've learned in your life that you want all the listeners to know? They must know.
Oh, the rule of shitty. I think beyond.
That's it?
I think beyond anything else, the rule of shitty is very important. And the other power of relationship. I fully explore the power of relationship in a passage in my book that just got published called Go Beyond Numbers, about the concept of social capital. The concept of capital in accounting has to do with things that you own. What do you own in your world? You own things more than money. And I won't get into all the other stuff, but one of the things you own are your relationships. You own that. You can save a relationship. You can spend a relationship. You can let it mature. You can put thorns in it. It is yours to manipulate or be selfless. That's the rule of social capital. And I explore the concept of relationship and the different kinds of social relationships that you have.
So I was going to ask people how they could find out more about you and learn more about you, but you've got to tell people right now, tell them how they can order that book.
You can go to Amazon. It's the book is called Go Beyond Numbers. You can go to the Tony Rose author page on Amazon and see all the books I've written.
Yes, this is not Tony's first rodeo when it comes to writing books.
I also have a podcast called Go Beyond Numbers. I think it's gobeyondnumbers.com. And then you can always go to rsjcpa.com, which is the website for my accounting firm, and you can connect to what I'm thinking and what I'm talking about. Because we try not to talk like everybody else in the accounting business. And we are, on one level, dinosaurs, and on another level, we're very avant-garde in the accounting business, because we know that our currency, it's not a commodity. Our value is in relationship, not on getting a tax return done or a financial statement done.
Well, and I know for a fact that's the way you look at your work. It's the prism through which you look at all your interactions in life. And I can't wait to read the way you just shared. You took relationships and you took money and how you use that terminology. And it's all true, how you can capitalize on it, spend it, waste it, go bankrupt. It's brilliant. It's just brilliant. I love it. I mean, you are so progressive when it comes to this. Other ways we might be dinosaurs, but absolutely ahead of the pack.
Yep.
All right. Last question. Absolute
Yes.
last question. And this one I really like to personalize. So I'm trying to think of what's the most personal question in this format. If you could speak to any financial person throughout history, anyone that worked with numbers, finance, business, anyone throughout history, who would it be and why?
What an interesting question. A financial person. I think I would love to talk to Alexander Hamilton.
Hamilton. Okay. Why?
He was really a Renaissance man and was very, very complex in many, many respects. I am sure on some level he was a perfect asshole.
Yes.
But also he was passionate. And to me, one of my chief values is passion. There's no sense, and you know this, Dr. Patty Ann, there's no sense in me doing anything if I can't do it passionately. If I don't have,
I don't know you to do anything not passionate.
Yeah.
Please.
So this was a truly passionate man that was able to look at the world and make sense of it in a very different way than anybody else in his world. He was also selfish. I think he did stuff that made sense to him and was selfish for himself. So,
didn't he create our current banking system or something?
The principles of our current banking system is basically the underpinnings are his stuff. So the whole concept of capitalism was not his concept, but how he implemented the capitalism on a governmental basis was certainly his. He started the first banking system in the United States that was national in scope, and the biography of Hamilton was very, very, very interesting. It also made it possible for me to understand when I watched Hamilton in the theater where everyone was coming from, because it was a great show. But knowing Hamilton's background and all who the players is very important. Anyway, Hamilton would be a very interesting guy to talk to. I'd want to smoke a cigar with Hamilton, have a cup of whiskey, and just see what he had to say.
And I can see you doing that. And really, when you think about Hamilton, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of, he in many ways was the quintessential Horatio Alger story in the States. He came as an immigrant, right?
Yeah.
And he was an entrepreneur, really, because he created a system. He revolutionized he just Nobody did it this way before. And it stands still to today, at least at its core.
And never quite accepted.
And never quite accepted.
Was always a little outside the crowd, I think, is my sense of him.
Yeah. And he self-sabotaged a lot.
Oh.
Big time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what you know what? I don't necessarily like talking finances with anybody. It doesn't rock my world. I mean, that way.
Yeah.
I don't want to get
you
in.
Like the people aspect.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyone that knows you knows that.
I understand finances so that I can help people make sense of their world. I understand taxes so I can help people make sense of their taxes and make sure people don't get arrested. But it's not really a hobby of mine.
So I will leave on this note, if I may. So you referenced this earlier, and I know you've heard me say this before. Nobody will care about how much you know about anything until they know how much you care. That's how you grew your business. And what was the other thing I was going to say that I just lost it? But you put people first, and people feel that. And you have, in spite of all your losses and your most recent one with your beloved bride of 52 years, you still have a life because you've capitalized on those relationships throughout your life. Yes, perhaps you like to define yourself and lead with being selfish, but someone that is totally selfish doesn't have the network of relationships that will help them through what you've gone through in the past and currently if they also weren't givers.
Patty Ann, I really define old age, not chronologically, but mentally.
Mm-hmm.
You are old if you believe you are done.
Correct.
You are old if you believe you are finished. And there's nothing new. I'm not remotely done.
Well, I can tell you for sure, Tony is a lifelong learner, and he has only just begun.